Well, I was waiting to see if we can include Martin Truex Jr. in this video, but I don't think I will. Sorry, Martin fans. Being able to retire at the top of your game in NASCAR is an extremely rare privilege. Back in the day, most drivers were forced into an early retirement by injury, or, well, they didn't get to make a decision at all. But very rarely, sometimes NASCAR drivers do put together amazing final seasons, so let's take a look at some of the best ones. Disclaimer though, just like in the worst final seasons video, these have to be planned final seasons, so any careers that were cut short due to injury or death will not be included in this video. Nowadays, with a well-timed win and decent consistency, you can artificially make your final season look a lot better than it really is thanks to the advent of the playoffs. But before any kind of postseason format existed, Bill Elliott managed to finish in the top 10 in points in his final full-time season with no assistance needed. Despite 2003 being Bill's 30th year racing in NASCAR, he looked as good as he always had, scoring 9 top 5s, 12 top 10s, and led a very impressive 600 laps on the season. Most drivers in their prime don't lead that many laps in a year. For reference, last year's champion Ryan Blaney only led 463 laps on the season, and Championship 4 contender Christopher Bell led 599 laps all of last year. It's more laps than his son Chase has led in the last 2 seasons combined. Bill Elliott was putting up numbers. He also won the next to last race of his full-time racing career at Rockingham in the fall, and nearly followed up with another win at Homestead the following week before suffering a tire failure on the final lap,
You fool!
which contributed to Bobby Labonte's last career win instead. I know I said this in my craziest final wins video, but could you imagine if Bill Elliott ended his full-time career with back-to-back wins? I don't know if anybody has ever even gotten remotely close to accomplishing the same feat. Just goes to show, they didn't call him Awesome Bill for nothing. One season that frequently gets overlooked is Cale Yarborough's last full-time year in 1980. And it's understandable why. Until Richard Petty in 1992, retirement seasons weren't really much of a thing. They usually weren't planned, they just sorta happened whenever the time was right. And so Cale, like many other drivers, kept racing part-time until 1988. So his last full-time season in 1980 is frequently forgotten about. But at 41 years old in his 23rd season, old Cale looked anything but washed, as he posted a ludicrous 6 wins and 19 top 5s, barely losing out on the cup to a young hotshot by the name of Dale Earnhardt. He also finished the season with an incredible rally, posting 5 consecutive top 3 finishes that included 2 wins. If he had just found 4 or 5 more positions over the course of the entire season, then he would have won his 4th cup in only 5 years. Jimmy Johnson may have won 5 consecutive titles with help from the chase format in the 2000s, but this 5-year stretch from 1976 to 1980 is arguably the most consistent streak in NASCAR history, with Cale never having an average finish in the year worse than 9th, and 38 wins came in this time frame. The only driver in the modern era with more wins in a 5-year stretch is Jeff Gordon, who had 47 from 1995 to 1999. Speaking of Jeffrey G, he too qualifies for this list with his remarkable 2015 season. The funny part is, by Jeff Gordon standards, 2015 was a horrible year. But despite that, he posted 5 top 5s, a crazy 21 top 10s, led nearly 300 laps, and finished 3rd in the final standings, thanks to a well-timed win at Martinsville, punching his ticket to the Championship 4. Which, admittedly, the playoff system makes this final season look a lot better on paper than it actually was. Maybe it was the system's way of offering retribution for screwing Jeff out of his title run in 2014. But even without the playoffs under a Winston Cup format, Jeff would have still finished 8th in points, which is ridiculously good for a final season. He also won 4 poles on the season, including one in his final Daytona 500, another stat that would make most drivers extremely envious. Rewinding the clock to 10 years prior though, in 2005, Gordon's bitter rival, and Bubba's dad, Rusty Wallace put together a pretty amazing final season of his own. Scoring 8 top 5s, 17 top 10s, leading nearly 300 laps and finishing 8th in the final points, Rusty's final season almost completely mirrors Gordon's. The only difference is, Rusty never got that sweet, sweet walk-off win like Gordon did in 2015. But as a consolation, in a non-chase format, Rusty would have done even better, finishing 6th in a season-long format, which would have been his best points finish since the 90s. Still, I'm sure Rusty happily took the 8th place. Qualifying for the old 10-driver chase for the cup in your last season was anything but easy. Next on this list is a bit of an enigma. While we've excluded careers that were cut short due to injury or death, the ending of Carl Edwards' career is still shrouded in mystery, and it likely wasn't intended to be his final season at the time. Many say that he left because he was tired of getting screwed by the system. Many think he suffered a minor concussion in that final big crash at Homestead. Carl refutes any of these narratives, saying that he just felt like it was the right time to leave. And he holds no animosity towards NASCAR for what happened on that night in 2016. But Carl has always been known for his good PR skills and not wanting to ruffle any feathers. Unless you're Brad Keselowski. So who really knows if that's the whole truth? At the end of the day, the only person who really knows is Carl himself. With only 12 full-time seasons, Carl has one of the shortest careers of any modern-day Cup driver who routinely won races. And his last year of 2016 was one of his greatest seasons to date. He won 3 races, which surprisingly is third only to his rookie year of 2005 and 2008 where he won 9 times. He had 9 top 5s, 18 top 10s, and led nearly 1,000 laps. I would call this the best final season in the modern era, if not for the fact that it probably wasn't planned to be one. This should have just been Carl coming into his prime in his late 30s like almost every other driver. So, for that reason, I would have to say that Jeff Gordon probably has the best modern era retirement season. But what about the greatest final seasons of all time? Well, what if I told you that they both happened in the same year? 1965 would mark the final full-time season for both Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson. Well, I'm using the term full-time rather loosely with Junior Johnson, who technically never ran all the races in one season. At best, he would run just above 50% of the races, which is why he never won a Cup Series championship. But 1965, his last year doing so, was his best by a wide margin. He won 13 races out of the 36 he entered, and led a staggering 4,000 laps. That's more than half the laps he ran all year. And despite missing nearly 20 races, he still finished 12th in the final standings. After the season, Johnson would only run a handful more times in 1966 as his focus shifted more towards ownership than driving. This could have been considered the all-time greatest final season if Ned Jarrett wasn't out there too. Like Junior, Ned also won 13 races this season. Surprisingly, he would only lead half the laps that Junior Johnson did, despite running the full season. But the one metric that Johnson was nowhere near matching Jarrett was average finish, as Ned Jarrett put together a remarkably consistent season with a 4.9 average finish, and finished in the top 10 a whopping 45 times in 54 entries. See, Junior Johnson was having a Kyle Larson checkers or wreckers season. When he won, he dominated, but when he lost, he was usually outside the top 20. Ned Jarrett may not have had the blinding speed that Junior Johnson did, I know, funny thing to say about a guy who won 13 races in 1 year, but he did have the consistency. With Ford announcing that they would temporarily withdraw from NASCAR in 1966, Ned Jarrett decided that at age 34 he had accomplished enough, and decided to retire young. Discounting Alan Kulwicki due to his unfortunate passing, Ned Jarrett is still the only driver to ever willingly retire as a champion. So who do you think had the most impressive final season? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. But don't forget to leave a like in this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more awesome NASCAR content.